Hey guys, welcome to this video, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to build a bot which made me 1,000 US dollars playing the Martingale roulette strategy. Alright, so as you can see here, my balance is $2,000. Of course, this is not real money. This is play or fake money. Alright, you can play for real money if you subscribe to the app, but I'm just currently using the demo account. And basically what I did is I just played $1 at a time, and I was playing it on even, and the odds on even and odd is 50-50. It's actually a little bit less than 50-50 because there's a 0 on the wheel. But basically the Martingale roulette strategy is you choose either even or odd, right? This also works with red and black, but I'm just going to go with even and odd. If I play $1 on even and I win, I then win $1 back. If I lose that $1, what I do is in the next round, the next spin, I double my bet. So now I play $2. And the purpose of this is if I win, I have now won my $1 back from the previous spin, plus I've made $1 profit. Now let's say I lose that $2 again. I'll now double my bet again. I play $4 and so on. So that's basically the strategy. You can read up more about it, but it's the most popular and commonly used roulette strategy. Okay, and theoretically, it's a foolproof system. The reason you can't actually win with this strategy in the casinos is because they usually put a maximum bet, because it's never going to go even forever. It's eventually going to go odd. And the same applies to anything else. If you're playing red, it's eventually going to go black, or if you're playing odd, it's eventually going to go even, and so on. If you reach the maximum bet, you can't keep doubling. So I'm not sure what the maximum bet is on this program. I don't think there is one. Maybe there is in the paid version. But basically you can just keep doubling the bet and you'll never lose. So let me show you how to build this bot. So I am going to open UiPath Studio. Okay. So the name of the strategy is the Martingale roulette strategy. So I'll just use this name. I'll just say Martingale roulette bot, and I'll just create that, or let me just say plays roulette, create. No, it's just busy creating the workspace. So note that I'm busy playing in an incognito window, but I guess it's fine. I generally prefer to build my bots in an incognito window. The reason I was playing incognito is that I can simply just close and open a new browser, and then my balance will be back to 1,000 if you lose all your money. So let me show you. Open main workflow. Okay, so let's build this. Right, so first step, let's first try and just make a simple bet. So first we need to choose an amount. So we want to click on this $1. Then we want it to click on even, and then we want it to spin. Right. Then it's going to do the spin.
$27 odd red.
There you go.
Please.
Cool. So it just landed on 27. Right. That's clearly an odd number, and we just lost. So now we have 1,999. So what we would do now is we double it. But I'm just now looking at which buttons we want to press. Next, we want to click this rebet button. So I'll click there. So let me just clear this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here, and I am going to I'll drag in a sequence, and then I'm going to drag in some click activities. Okay, so click. So I'm going to click indicate on screen. And now I want to click on even, but notice, or I want to click on one of these buttons, but notice this entire thing is recognized as an image, which means we can't use selectors. 77.0.za, the developers probably built this purposefully like this because they don't want anyone building bots to interfere or to build bots to run and compete against their online gambling. So there is a workaround to this. What you can do is you can use the position on the screen. So now instead of clicking, right, how we'd usually click and we'd grab a UI element, you can just draw a square, right? So you see how I'm drawing a square around this number 1, just like that. Now, what this click activity has done is, instead of it having a typical selector, all right, you'll see now the selector is just basically it's recognizing the browser, then it's the animation container, which is this entire block, right, which is this entire block. That's the only selector it's got. But in order to identify this part, what it's done is it's grabbed a clipping region. So this is the X and Y coordinates on the screen of this. So it's actually the corners of each of the square. That's what these coordinates are over here. So that's how we're actually able to identify this button. So we can actually drag in a few click activities, and we can do this for all the other things we want to press. So next we want to press on even. So I'm just going to drag this region here. Okay, then I'm going to click, or what we would want to do now is we would want to click spin. So let me just come here. I'll just place one bet here. So now we can see the spin button. Now I'll come back here, indicate on screen, draw a square around, spin. Just like that. Note that you can also use like computer vision, or you can use OCR or whatever you want, but this technique is sufficient for now, since these elements will never be moving around. It's always going to be in the same positions in the browser. Right, also make sure that your browser is zoomed to 100% when doing this. So you can click Ctrl-0 on your keyboard, and then it'll zoom to 100%. Okay, now let's just run this and see if this works. Well, let me just clear that.
Please.
So it clicks one, clicks even, and then it clicks spin. There you go.
19 onto red.
So we saw how that worked, right? Now the next step, what we want to do is we want to determine, or well, we actually want to click on rebet. So let's just go add that in quickly. Indicate rebet. Cool. It's also good practice to name all of these. So I'm just going to say click $1, click even, click spin, and click rebet. That seems fine. Next steps, what we want to do is we want to determine whether this is an even number or an odd number. And because we can't use the UI element, we're going to need to use some type of OCR to read this number. Okay, so how are we going to do that? We can use a get OCR text activity. Here it is. So I'm going to drag this in, and I'm going to indicate on screen, and I'm just going to draw a little square around the region where the number would be. Something like that. Cool. And you want to click on Tesseract OCR and make sure you have invert set to true. And the reason for this is because this is the number 19 is written as light text, or it's white on dark. Usually text is written like black onto white, then you'd leave this as false, or as the default value of false. But because we have white or light writing on a dark background, we want to invert it and set it to true. This makes it more accurate to be able to read. What we can then do is we can come here to our text output, Control-K, and create a variable, and we can say number result. Cool, you can call that anything. And then so number result, let's see, this is now an out argument. We want to convert this to an integer, but we'll do that a bit later. For now, let's just use a message box and see if this works. So I'm going to put number result over there. Okay, and I'll come here. I'm going to click rebet, clear.
Let's please.
And let's run this. So it should now click 1, should click even, should spin.
Zero green.
So it landed on 0, but see the output is EV. Now this is clearly wrong, right? This is not the number 0. So what we want to do is we need to make this more accurate. So a quick way to make this more accurate is you can come to your OCR engine, in this case the Tesseract OCR, also known as the Google OCR. Come here to allowed characters, and inside here put a string, put your double quote, and inside put all the characters that are allowed. So notice how it outputted letters, but we only want numbers. So I'm going to put 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and these are now the only characters that are allowed. So I'll click OK. And now this should be limiting to only extracting numbers. So let's try run this. I'll just clear all of this again. Let's run file.
Even black.
There you go. So land on 20. Now notice that it outputted 0, okay, which is not good. We wanted it to output 20. So I'll click OK. So now there's clearly still a problem.
Even black.
I see what the problem is now. What's happening is it's showing the pop-up before it's actually landed on a number, which means it's reading it too early. So it was actually reading it accurately before. Remember, before it chose 0, which was a previous, and now it's choosing 20, which was the previous one. So all we need to do now to basically get this to work is add a delay activity between the bet. So this click rebet actually needs to be down here. And after the spin, we need a delay. So I'm going to come to snippets, come to delay, and let's add a 10-second delay. So now adding a 10-second delay, we'll wait for it to finish spinning before it actually tries to scan the number. Right, so let's try this. Clear. So this is the process of building a bot. It's all about trial and error, and then just keep building it until it works, you know? So let's see if this works.
27 odd red.
All right.
Next, please.
So now let's wait for our pop-up. It's landed 27. So now it should grab the correct number. There you go. There's our message box, 27. Perfect. So now we will be able to use this number to determine whether the number it landed on was even or odd. So we know what we need to do in the next bet, whether we should double or keep it the same. Right, so 27, I'll just click OK. Great. So now we have the number. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use an assign, okay, and we have our variable number result, okay. Let's just think, what are we going to do? We need to convert this to an integer. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to create a new variable, and I'll say int number result, okay. I'll make sure our int number result is set to an integer. Cool. I'm also going to set our sequence name up here to main, just so it's easier. It's also good practice to do that. So now we can see in our scope that our scope is set to main, which is what we want. Then what we're going to do in our expression over here, we're going to say convert. I'm going to use the convert method dot to int. So we have here to int. I think we used int32. Let's just see what we used here. Yes, it is int32. Right, so convert to int32. Then inside here, I'm going to put our number result. Remember, this number is a string, which we're converting to an integer. So just in case there's any spaces in the middle, sometimes that happens with reading OCR. I'm just going to use a replace, and then I'm going to replace anytime there's a space with a double quote, which is basically just empty. So it's just deleting any spaces. This is, I can also use a dot trim, right? That trims the trailing and leading white space. So if there's any space in the beginning or end of the string, it's also going to delete that. This would have done it as well, this over here, but I'll just keep that just for extra safety. And that should be it. That should now convert our number into an integer. Let me click OK, and I'll say assign number to integer. Now we can use an if activity. And in this if, we are going to be checking if the number is even or odd. So the way you can do this is using the modular function. So I'm going to say int number result mod 2 equals 0. Okay, and what this is basically doing is it's trying to divide 2 into the number int number result. And what's going to happen is if there's no remainders, right? If there's no remainders, then the answer is going to be 0. If there is remainders, the answer is going to be 1, which will make this expression false, and then it'll go into the else. So this is basically how you check whether a number is even or odd. Right, so let's come here and test this out. I'm going to use a little message box. I'll drag in this message box. Actually, I'll keep this one here. So we check the number. And then I'll paste in a new message box. And over here, I'm going to say even. And over here, I'm going to say odd. Just like that. So this should now check whether the number is even or odd. Let's test this out. Okay, I'll come here, clear this, and let's run this.
Even black.
Alright, so it's landed on 24. We know 24 is an even number, so let's see what our pop-ups say. Our message box, it should come up any second now. There you go, it's 24, that's great. We'll click OK. And then it's even. Perfect, so that worked. Now, I'd also just like to mention that sometimes it's going to land on 0. Alright, and now, what are we going to do if it lands on 0? Because 0 is neither even nor odd. So we need to handle that here. I'm going to use an if, drag that into the then. It basically assumes that 0 is an even number, theoretically, even though it's not. But what we're doing here in this if is we know it's running through the then, and then we're going to use an if condition, and we're going to say if the int number result is equal to 0, then over here, then we'll have another message box. So I'll copy this one, paste this, and I'll call this 0. Then we'll have another if over here for when the int number result is not equal to 0. So this is the expression you use for not equal to 0. You use that sign there, and then I'll put our message box for even over there. So how are we going to check whether we win or lose? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some variables to check this. Let's do this. I'm going to drag in an assign over here, and I'll drag in a few assigns, one over here if it's even, one if it's odd, and one if it's 0, one if it's odd, and one if it's even. Okay, well, let's say count, some type of count. Let's say lose count. Right, lose count. We'll put our lose count variable here as well. Ooh, note I need to come to the variables panel for us and change our scope from sequence to main. Okay, lose count, this needs to be an integer, and the default value of this is, let's set the default value of this to 0. Okay, now if the lose count, so basically here, if it's even, we basically won, right? So our lose count will then be reset to 0 because we haven't lost. But if we do lose, right, if it hits 0, that's a lose. So we're going to say lose count plus 1. Now we're going to add 1 to lose count. If it's odd, we're also losing. So I'm going to say lose count equals lose count plus 1. So we're basically just incrementing the lose count integer variable. All right, so it starts on 0, then it's going to go 1, then it's going to go 2, 3, 4, and it's going to count how many times it has lost. Okay, so there's our our lose count. Now what we can do is we can scroll up here, and where is it that we make our bet? Over here. No, click even. Yes, this is it. Okay, so we're going to use an if condition. All right, so we're going to say if lose count is equal to 0, then we drag in our click even. So what this is doing is it's going to make a single bet if our lose count is 0, meaning that it's the first run ever, or we have our lose count is reset to 0 as we did over here after it hits an even number at least once. Now what we're going to do is in this else section, we need to basically click even a few more times to double the bet. Okay, so how are we going to double the bet? This can get a little bit tricky. I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in our first bet, we are going to be betting $1. And let me just say, insert one row above. So this, if we win, and if we lose. So if we win, we're going to bet $1 again. In fact, we're always going to be betting $1 if we win. If we lose, we are going to double our bet, and we are going to bet 2. Then we're going to bet 4. Then we're going to bet 8. Then we're going to bet 16. Then we're going to bet 32. So we now need to calculate this value based on these increment numbers. And the way you can actually do that is you can say, I believe it's 2 to the power of n. So let me see if there's any power functions. Equals power, a number raised to power. That's what we want. Okay, so we have the base and then the exponent. So the base would be 2, and the exponent would then be this number over here. Enter. And there you go. Look how it suggests autofill 4, 8, 16, 32. And yes, that is what we want. So I'll drag that down. So that is now our formula. Power 2 to the power of the count, the increment. So let's come back here. Okay. And let's use what are we going to use? Let's use a while activity. Okay. So I'm going to drag in a while, and our condition is, so we're going to need a new variable. Let's make a new variable and call it bet count. Bet count, so that's the amount of times we click on the bet. Bet count will also be an integer, and I'll set a default value to 1. All right, because we're always going to need to bet at least once. And we can say our condition is when our bet count is less than or equal to, then we can use the math function dot pow. So similar to how it works in Excel, and then we have the base and the exponent, where our base is 2 to the power of our lose count variable. This is the lose count variable over here. So the number in the exponent is the lose count. So that, and then the number there is a default or a static 2, and that is basically how we can run this. Cool. Back here, then inside there we can drag in our click even activity, just like so, and that should be fine. What we should also do is we should always make sure our bet count is reassigned to 1 every time this part runs. So our bet count must always start at 1. Okay, so it'll assign to 1 just before it comes here all the time. Then I'm going to have to increment the bet count over here. Bet count is equal to bet count plus 1. So it's going to keep adding bet count, and it's going to keep running while the bet count number is less than the amount of times it needs to click that bet. And run.
even red.
So it landed on 34. Where's our message box? Should come up. There you go, 34, even, cool. And the workflow then ends. And the reason this ends is because we don't have it in a loop. We want this to be in a loop so it can keep going, right? So what we can actually do is, or rather, let me just, instead of doing that, I'm just going to come here and holding control on my keyboard to select all the activities. Like that. And I'll right click cut. I'll drag in a while. Okay. And I'll just set this to true just for now, so it's always running. And then I'll paste in everything like so. So now this is going to run in a loop. Okay. This will never stop because we have set our condition to true, as we can see there. But let's now see if this is going to work. I'm going to clear this and let's click run. So it's bet $1.
3 odd red.
Bets, please.
Okay. Lands on 3. Seems like this delay is taking quite long. I could actually shorten that 10-second delay. Make it something shorter. So landed on, so it thinks it landed on 5, which is not good. That seems like a bad thing, but it still landed on odd, which is good. Okay. Let it watch it. Okay. So now it has, you can see there in yellow, it says $2. So you can see it doubled the bet now. So let's see if we're going to win or if we're going to lose. So landed on 2, so now we just won $2. So we won our previous bet back, but now it looks like we've run into an error. Get OCR text, scrape returned empty text. Now, why did it do that? So it returned empty text. You click stop here. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to these message boxes and I'm going to disable them. I'm going to disable this one as well. And I'll disable this one. Profile still set to scan here. Maybe if we try one of these other ones, it might be more accurate. Let's just see what it says. So screen is for pre-processing, saying suitable for remote desktop applications. Scan for scanned files. And legacy, the default processing images. Okay, let's try this. Let's say screen. I think screen is actually going to be more accurate here. I think that's where we were going wrong.
Bets.
Zero green.
Bets.
So it landed on 0. Let's see what our pop-up says. Is it 0? Yes, it is. Okay, so that's accurate. That's better. Cool. So I'll click OK. So now it should double our bets because, yes, it's working. Cool. And that's because 0 is neither even nor odd. So our logic was correct. Now it just landed on 16. Okay. There's 16. Okay. So it landed on an even number, so we won. Now it's restarting back to 1. So this is the Martingale roulette strategy. So if you keep this running, you're eventually going to be in a profit, unless you max out, of course. You keep doubling and then you run out of bets. So let's see. So now we doubled our bet because it landed on 23, which was an odd number. So yeah, that's the Martingale strategy. It seems foolproof, but it's not actually. You still can lose money this way, but it's a very effective method. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and if you want to download this bot, you can see in the description below on how to download it. Right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.